Chapter 15. An arid voice calls from the patio. Isn't anyone interested in the barbecue? Mrs. Patton clutches a bag of lettuce to her chest, and her usually mild eyes suddenly look wild behind the rimless spectacles she wears. Arun too pauses. Then she murmurs, "Quick, wash your hands, dear. Daddy's got dinner waiting." And the murmur is as an order might be from another, so urgent is it, and eloquent. When Arun goes to wash his hands in the small washroom under the stairs, there is a sink wedged in between an ironing board and a filing cabinet, and the toilet beneath a shelf loaded with garden tools and pesticides. He notices an uninhabited slipper at the foot of the stairs, just protruding from behind the banister. On coming out with damp hands, he takes another look at it, curious. It does not move, but he feels impelled to ask hoarsely, "Melanie?" The owner of the slippers does not reply, but ruffles a bag she is holding on her lap. He retraces his steps to find her sitting on the bottom stair, dressed in denim shorts and a faded pink t-shirt, holding a party-sized bag of salted peanuts into which she reaches and from which she draws out a fistful. She sits in the gloom of the unlit staircase, munching the nuts with a mulish obstinacy, regarding him with eyes that are slits of pink-rimmed green. Has she been crying? She looks sullen rather than tearful. It is her habitual expression. One reflects that he has not once seen it change. "We are asked to come to dinner," he mutters, looking away, down at her bare foot beside the empty, dusty slipper. "By your father." In reply, she thrusts her fist down into the bag again, crinkling it loudly, and draws out another handful of peanuts. She does not say a word. Perhaps the crunching of nuts is her reply. Certainly she makes it expressive and defiant. Stooping even further. This is only the latest in his many failed attempts to involve Melanie in speech. He goes out through the kitchen door onto what the family calls the patio. At its edge, just under the branches of a large, spreading spruce, Mr. Patton has set up his grill, at which he stands, garbed in a long, red-checked apron that ties at his neck and descends to his knees. Embroidered across the pocket at the top is the legend, "Texas Bar and Grill." He holds a spatula up in the air waiting for his congregation to assemble. It is a congregation of two, hesitant and slow. "Where's Rod?" he demands. "Where's Melanie?" Mrs. Patton and Arun exchange looks, furtively, and Mrs. Patton goes bravely forward as if to take the shot, and says placatingly, "I'm sure they'll be here in a minute, dear." "Don't they know I came home early to cook their dinner?" Mr. Patton sounds petulant, a minister who cannot see why his congregation dwindles. His lower lip is moist like a baby's, and his hands too are surprisingly soft, pampered. "Got my work done, got into the car and drove home half an hour early so's to marinate the steaks, and then they can't even get here on time to eat." Arun stands looking at his shoes, dusty from the long walk out of town, and carefully refrains from informing him that Melanie is indoors gorging on peanuts. He waits for the dreaded moment when he will have to confess what he wishes he did not have to confess. Again. Will Mrs. Patton make the confession for him? Will Mrs. Patton be brave and make it unnecessary for him to speak, publicly reveal himself unworthy and fit to take the wafer upon his tongue, the wine into his throat? "Come on, bring me your plates," Mr. Patton tells his foot-dragging communicants, trying to sound jovial, but only managing to sound impatient. Mrs. Patton advances, holding her plate before her. She stands very upright before the grill, trying not to flinch, but evidently fully aware of the gravity of the ceremony. "Thank you, dear," she says as she receives the slab of charred meat on her plate, making it dip a little with its weight so that grease and blood ran across it and spread. "Now you, Arun," commands Mr. Patton, sliding the spatula under another slab that is blackening upon the coals. "This here should be just right for you. Red." He joliered the nervous newcomer to his congregation, not yet saved, but surely on his way. Arun has made the mistake of telling the Pattons once that his name means red in Hindi, and Mr. Patton has seized upon this as a good joke, particularly in conjunction with his son's name, Rod. Fortunately, Arun has not elaborated that it means specifically the red sky at sunrise, or Mr. Patton might now be calling him Dawn. Instinctively then, Arun steps backwards and even puts hands behind his back. Some stubborn adherence to his old tribe asserts itself and prevents him from converting. Oh, I just have the bun and then salad, he stammers, and hair falls over his forehead in embarrassment. Mr. Patton raises an eyebrow, slowly, significantly holding the spatula in the air while the stick sputters in indignation at this denial. Mrs. Patton rushes in hurriedly, but too late. "Aren't a vegetarian, dear?" Then her voice drops to a whisper, like me. Mr. Patton either does not hear the whisper, or does but ignores it. He responds only to the first half of the statement. "Okay, now I remember," he says at last. "Yeah, you told me once. Just can't see how anyone would refuse a good piece of meat, that's all. It's not natural, and it costs." Mrs. Patton begins to play the role of a distracting decoy. She flutters about the patio, helping herself to bread and mustard, pattering rapidly. "Aaron," explain this to us all, dear. You know about the Hind's religion and the cows." Mr. Patton gives his head a shake, sadly disappointed in such moral feebleness, and turns the slab of meat over and over. "Yeah, how they let them out on the streets because they can't kill 'em and don't know what to do with them. I could show 'em. A cow's a cow, and good red meat as far as I'm concerned." "Yes, dear," Mrs. Patton coos consolingly. "And here it's all turning to coal," Mr. Patton mourns, patting the scorched slice. Aaron follows Mrs. Patton to a table set with platters and bowls of lettuce in rolls. Sadly, he resigns himself to the despised foods, wondering once again how he has let himself be drawn into this repetitious farce. The ceremonies of other tribes must seem either farcical or outrageous always. As bad as anything he remembers at home. Thinking of his father's stolid face and frown at the table, grave and disapproving, he feels he must assure Mrs. Patton, as he would his mother, "I will eat the bun and salad." Mr. Patton says nothing. He is prying the scorched shreds of meat off the grill with his spatula and scraping them onto his plate, grievously aware of the failure of this summer night's sacrament. Mrs. Patton settles onto a canvas chair and pantomimes the eating of a meal while playing with it with her fork. It's really good," she murmurs. "Rod and Melanie just don't know what they're missing." Her words make Aaron wince. Will she never learn to live well alone? She does not seem to have his mother's well-developed instinct for survival through evasion. After a bit of pushing about slices of tomato and leaves of lettuce, in his time in America he has developed a hearty abhorrence for the raw foods everyone here thinks the natural diet of a vegetarian. He dares to glance at Mr. Patton, as he expected. Mr. Patton's underlip is thrust out in a petulant scowl as he cuts and saws at a piece of meat that to Arun seems not merely raw, but living. It is bleeding in a stream across Mr. Patton's plate. The air is murky, with the smoke of the dying barbecue and the spreading dusk. The blood is a stain, a wound at its heart. The blue oblong of electric light that hangs from a branch of the spruce tree over the barbecue is being bombarded by the insects that evening summons up from the surrounding green. They hurl themselves at it like heathens in the frenzy of their false religion, and die with small, piercing detonations. The evening is punctuated by their unredeemed deaths.